The sky over the human embassy shimmered with a strange glow as the alien ship descended. Slowly and silently, a crowd had gathered below with camera soldiers and leaders. Standing shoulder to shoulder, the air buzzed with tension and excitement. As it was the first time in history that the royal emissaries of the alien world, Veralia, had come to Earth for peace talks. They had trained for decades in diplomacy rituals and sacred codes, and now the moment had finally arrived. From the silver ramp of the ship stepped a tall, elegant figure. Her skin shimmered like moonlight, and her eyes glowed faintly with violet hue. She was Princess Alari, youngest daughter of the Queen of Veralia and chosen envoy for this mission. She wore ceremonial armor that sparkled with symbols of her house, and in her hands she held a glowing crystal orb, the symbol of peaceful intent. Her expression was calm, serious, proud. She had been taught that humans were wild, impulsive, unpredictable creatures, but still, she wanted this meeting to go smoothly. On the human side, a man stepped forward, dressed in a dark, formal uniform with a symbol of Earth's United Alliance on his chest. He had no weapon, no armor, only a warm and open smile. His name was Ambassador Daniel Carter, a man known for solving conflicts with words, not weapons. As he approached Alari, everyone expected him to bow or extend a hand in formal gesture. Instead, he did something no one could have predicted. He stepped closer with open arms and pulled the alien girl into a hug. Gasps filled the air. Soldiers tightened their grips. Cameras zoomed in. Aliens on the ship flinched in horror. Alari froze, completely stunned. Her body stiffened and her eyes widened. Her people had no tradition like this. Touch was sacred, rare, reserved only for family or dying warriors. And now here was this human pressing his body against hers in front of thousands of watching eyes. For a moment time stood still. Alari did not know whether to react in anger, fear, or confusion. Her mind raced through all her training, but found no protocol for this. Her guards took a step forward, but she raised one hand, stopping them without looking. She wanted to understand this strange act. The hug lasted only a few seconds, but for Alari it felt like a wave of warmth passing through her armor into her chest. She did not understand it, but it was not painful, not hostile. It felt strange, but gentle. Human emotions were chaotic but powerful, and in that one simple action, the ambassador had delivered a message without using a single word. When he pulled back, he smiled again and spoke softly, but she did not hear the words. Her mind was still focused on what had just happened. She touched her chest where his arm had pressed, and her fingers lingered there, feeling heat that was not hers. The alien guards looked confused. The human leaders whispered among themselves. The crowd waited. Alari realized everyone was looking at her, waiting for her response. She cleared her throat, stepped back, and spoke in her native language, which her translator immediately echoed. Greeting accepted in unexpected form. The crowd burst into applause, thinking it was a great success. The alien girl nodded slowly, trying to stay calm. But deep inside her, something had shifted. A question had formed, and it would not go away. Why did that simple touch feel more honest than any ritual she had ever learned? Later, in the private chamber, she stood alone, staring at the mirror. Her hand again rested on her chest. She had been hugged by a human, a wild, unpredictable, emotional creature, and she had not pushed him away. Her mind was filled with images of the moment, replaying again and again. What if it had not been recorded? What if no one had seen? Would she have reacted differently? Was it weakness? Was it curiosity? A voice from the communicator broke her thoughts. The High Elder demanded a full report. She replied with the formal version of events, but left out how her heart had skipped when he smiled. She did not mention that for the first time in her life she felt something not ordered, not rehearsed, something real. The ceremonial welcome had been broken by human behavior, but had it truly been broken, or had it been made stronger? As she sat down on the edge of the bed, her eyes drifted toward the stars outside the window. The galaxy was wide, full of ancient rules and traditions, but in one small moment a human had ignored them all and simply offered warmth. Alari closed her eyes and whispered to herself a word in her language that meant change, not through battle, but through connection. She did not yet know that this moment would start something far bigger than peace talks, far bigger than treaties, far bigger than royal missions. This was not just a hug, it was a spark. And sparks had a way of starting fires. Would that fire build or destroy? She would soon find out. The grand hall of the Varelian embassy glowed with pale blue light as Princess Alari stood still. In the center, surrounded by glowing banners, ancient scripts, and high-ranking elders whose eyes pierced through her like daggers of silence, the memory of the human hug still lingered on her skin. Though no one could see it, no one could feel how. It stirred something inside her that had no name, no rule, no ceremony to explain it. The elder chancellor spoke first, his voice sharp and cold like crystal shattering in the wind. He asked her to explain her inaction, her failure to reject the humans. Contact, her disgraceful acceptance of something so informal, so primitive, so human. Alari did not flinch. She did not lower her gaze, but inside her thoughts swirled like a storm trapped in a silent bottle. She remembered his arms, his warmth, his scent. Strange and unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. She remembered the gasps, the frozen guards, the silence, and then the applause from the humans. She had trained her whole life for diplomacy, for tradition, for protocol, but not for this, not for something that bypassed all logic and entered straight into her being. Instead of defending herself with anger, she chose curiosity. She asked the elders a question. What if the hug was not disrespect, but a different kind of language? What if the humans expressed peace not through formality, but through feeling? What if their chaos was not weakness, but another kind of strength? Her words echoed in the hall, and for a moment no one replied. Then the whispers began, quiet at first, like rustling leaves, then louder. Like rising winds, some elders scoffed, others frowned, a few leaned forward, eyes narrowing in thought. Alari remained silent, letting them speak, letting them judge. She had given them her truth, even if they were not ready to receive it back on Earth. The human ambassador Daniel Carter watched the alien broadcasts with interest. He saw how they reacted, how their faces twisted in confusion, how their voices rose in debate. He smiled, not with arrogance, but with understanding. He knew what that hug had done, not just to her, but to everyone watching. He opened a secure channel and sent her a message, simple and clear. I meant no offense, just warmth, just honesty, just being human. Alari received the message in her private chamber, far from the ears of the council. She read it once, then again. Her fingers hovered over the reply panel, but she hesitated. She did not know what to say because she did not yet understand what she felt. The next day, she observed humans from the shadows, hidden by tech and protocol. She watched them greet each other with hugs, with laughter, with tears. They hugged in sorrow, they hugged in joy, they hugged when words failed them, when language fell short, when silence needed comfort. She began to realize something important, something powerful. Humans were not bound by rigid tradition. They flowed like rivers, sometimes messy, sometimes wild, but always moving, always alive. In her own palace, emotions were wrapped in layers of control, smiles, practiced words chosen with precision, hearts hidden behind duty, behind law, behind rank. But here on Earth, emotions lived on the surface, worn, proudly shared, openly. Alari sat in a quiet garden that evening, watching two human children chase glowing insects, laughing, without fear, without purpose, just being present, just being real. She felt a strange ache inside her, a longing she could not explain. The communicator buzzed again, another message from Daniel. He invited her to a place, not a meeting room, not a press stage, but a human festival full of food, lights, music, and people. She stared at the invitation, unsure what it meant, unsure what she wanted. Still, she went. The festival was unlike anything she had seen. Bright colors, wild sounds, chaotic smells, and faces filled with joy. She wore a cloak to hide her royal markings and walked among them unnoticed. She saw people dancing, holding hands, eating together, talking without fear. Then she saw him. Daniel stood near a fire, laughing with locals, his face lit by the flames. He looked up and saw her, instantly smiling, not surprised, not formal, just welcoming. She walked toward him slowly, unsure of what to do, unsure of what to say. He extended his hand, this time not for a hug, just an open hand, waiting, not demanding. She took it, and in that touch something passed between them, not words, not messages, not politics, something simple, something true. Later, as the night ended and the stars returned, Alari sat alone on a bench beside a sleeping tree. Her heart was quiet but not cold. Her mind was full but not confused. She understood now. The hug had not been an insult. It had been a bridge, not a threat, but an invitation. She looked up at the stars and whispered a thought, not from her training, not from her books, but from herself. The moon hung low over the Earth embassy as the lights of the city flickered below like stars scattered on the ground. Princess Alari stood near the wide window of her private quarters, her reflection barely visible against the glass. Her eyes were not focused on the stars or the moon or the shifting clouds above. They were searching for something far more complex, something hidden inside her own thoughts. Ever since that moment when the human ambassador hugged her, the world had tilted just slightly. She still followed her royal duties, still spoke with calm, still walked with grace, but inside her something had changed. And that something refused to stay quiet. She had spent the last 3 days observing humans more closely than any of her ancestors had ever dared. She watched their emotions, their expressions, their touch, and their laughter. Everything they did seemed unfiltered, yet honest, messy, yet meaningful, strange, yet beautiful. Her personal guards believed she remained in her chamber for meditation, but Alari had other plans. She activated her cloaking device, an advanced piece of alien technology that bent light and sound around her body, turning her into nothing more than a whisper in the air. She stepped out into the hallway, silent as a thought, and began her journey through the Earth Embassy. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because of fear, but because of anticipation. She reached the human sector, a restricted area for guests like her, but her mission tonight was not diplomatic, it was personal. She located his room after scanning the biometric logs and waited near the door. Her heart pulsed in a rhythm, unfamiliar yet strangely pleasant. She reached out and pressed the signal pad, and within seconds, the door slid open. Daniel stood there, dressed in a simple shirt and pants. Clearly unprepared for a royal visit, his eyes widened for a moment before softening into a smile. The same smile that had confused and calmed her on their first meeting. He stepped aside, without asking why she was there, without alerting the guards, without showing fear or surprise. He just welcomed her like a friend might welcome another. In the quiet hours of the night, she entered slowly and sat on the edge of the couch, her posture stiff, her hands resting in her lap. Daniel poured a drink and offered it. Without a word, she accepted, though she did not drink it. She came here for answers, not rituals. Why did you hug me? She asked. Daniel sat across from her, not too close, not too far. His eyes did not wander, his voice remained gentle. Because it felt right, that was all he said, and yet those 4 words seemed to echo inside her, louder than the music of her own world, louder than the voices of her teachers, louder than the commands of her ancestors. She pressed further. Why does it feel right to touch someone without permission, without knowing their rank, their history, their purpose? Because sometimes connection happens before understanding, he replied. Alari had no answer to that, no counter-argument, no logical defense. All she had were questions, and for the first time in her life, she did not fear the absence of answers. They spoke for hours that night, not of treaties or war or science, but of stories. Daniel shared tales of his childhood, of loss, of friendship, of the time he nearly drowned, and the stranger who saved him, of the teacher who believed in him, of the dog he lost when he was 10. Alari listened quietly, absorbing each word like sunlight. On frozen ground, each story melted a piece of the cold discipline inside her and replaced it with something warmer, something more human. She found herself smiling, and it felt strange, and then she laughed, and it felt even stranger, because Varelian royalty never laughed in public, never let joy escape without a filter. Daniel said nothing about it. He just smiled again and leaned back as if her laughter was the most natural sound in the universe. Eventually silence settled between them, not awkward, but peaceful, like 2 stars drifting in the same orbit, neither colliding nor separating. Before she left, she asked one last question. Do humans always break rules so easily? Only the ones that need breaking, Daniel replied as she walked back to her chamber. Invisible once more, her thoughts raced ahead of her feet. Her world was built on rules, on structure, on legacy, but Earth showed her a different kind of strength, one that lived in the heart, not the throne. She reached her room and deactivated the cloak. The lights responded to her presence, and the walls glowed softly in welcome. But she no longer needed comfort from walls or lights. She sat down and opened her private journal, a device only readable by her, and began to write. Not a report, not a royal message, just a memory of the night, a night when a human did not try to impress her or conquer her or flatter her. He just listened, he just shared, and that made her feel more seen than any royal title ever had. She closed her eyes and let the memory play again, not with fear, not with confusion, but with hope. Hope that maybe this strange, chaotic world had more to offer than she ever imagined. Maybe, just maybe, she would find a place within it, not as a princess, but as herself. The great Marble hall of the Varelian High Court shimmered under the soft light of the twin moons as Princess Alari stood alone in the center. Her armor replaced by a ceremonial robe of deep violet woven with silver threads that symbolized both nobility and judgment. Her expression was calm on the surface, but her heart beat faster than ever before. Each heartbeat felt like a drum of rebellion inside her chest, echoing the words she had not yet spoken. Around her, the Council of Elders formed a wide circle, their chairs elevated high above the floor, carved with sacred glyphs and lined with glowing stones that pulsed with their energy and status. Their faces were unreadable, carved from discipline shaped by centuries of order each elder held. A crystal orb that recorded truth, a device that could not be fooled by charm or silence. The elder chancellor leaned forward, his voice calm but heavy with expectation. He asked her to explain her actions, explain her secret meeting with the human ambassador, explain why a royal of Varelia would choose personal contact over official protocol. Princess Alari lifted her chin and took a deep breath, not to calm herself, but to steady the truth that now lived inside her like fire. She spoke clearly and without hesitation. The human hug was not a threat, not an insult, not a violation of peace. It was an expression of emotion, a bridge of intent, something I felt not with my mind but with my spirit. I met him again, not as a spy, not as a traitor, but as a seeker of understanding. The court buzzed with whispers, and ripples of disapproval spread through the elder seats like a wave of ice across warm water. The word traitor echoed softly from the mouth of Elder Volan, known for his strict views on tradition. You allowed an alien species to access your emotions, said another. You allowed yourself to be seen without the mask of royalty. Larry replied without blinking, perhaps that is not weakness, perhaps that is strength. A low murmur moved across the court like distant thunder. The council did not expect defiance, and certainly not from one so young. The laws of Varelia were clear. Royal blood must remain pure in conduct and discipline. Personal bonds with alien species were forbidden, especially emotional ones. Elder Myra, the oldest among them, stood slowly. Her voice was quieter than the others but carried deeper weight. You must now choose the path of restoration or exile. Denounce your actions as confusion, and we will forgive you. Continue to defend them, and you shall walk the lonely path away from the crown, away from Homalari. Looked around the hall, not with fear, but with clarity. Her entire life had been a sculpture of expectations shaped by other hands. Her every word, her every step, her every gesture had been rehearsed, polished, approved, until now she took a step forward and raised her voice, not with anger, but with truth. I will not denounce the hug. I will not erase the feeling I discovered. I will not lie to preserve comfort. I felt something that day, something that changed me. I am no longer just a princess. I am a voice of change. The council fell silent after a long pause. Elder Myra nodded slowly, as if expecting this answer. Then you must undergo the trial of connection. A journey to Earth where you will live without title, without protection. You will observe, learn, and return only when you hold proof that this emotion, this connection, is more than weakness. If you fail, you will be stripped of all royal rights forever. Alari bowed, not out of submission, but out of respect. Except she left the chamber without looking back. Her steps were steady, her eyes clear. Her guards did not follow, her servants did not wait. Her chambers were sealed, and her title was placed in suspension. Back on Earth, Daniel received the message with surprise and quiet concern. He read the words twice, then looked up at the stars above his balcony. She is coming to live among us, not as royalty, but as someone who wants to understand. He did not know what that meant for her, or for him, or for the fragile alliance between two worlds, but he knew it mattered. The next day, a new file arrived at the human embassy. A list of conditions, a list of limitations, a name stripped of title. Solaria Varelia, observer of human culture. No guards, no ambassadors, no interference. Daniel closed the file and whispered to himself, welcome back. Far away in space, Alari stood aboard a small diplomatic shuttle, no longer shining with royal symbols, no longer guarded by soldiers. Her hands rested on her lap, and her gaze remained fixed on the blue planet ahead. This was not exile, this was freedom. Not the freedom to escape rules, but the freedom to rewrite them, and perhaps one day to teach others that connection is not weakness. It is the first step toward unity, toward peace, toward something no ceremony could ever create, something real. The air in New Geneva smelled of fresh rain and flowering trees as Alari stepped onto Earth soil not as a royal envoy, not as a guarded diplomat, but as a solitary observer. Her arrival drew no crowds, no speeches, no reporters, just one human standing. Near the landing pad with tired eyes and a gentle smile, Daniel Carter offered no bow, no salute, no fanfare. He simply held a coat and extended it as the breeze whispered through the trees. Alari accepted the coat without a word. Her royal robes were gone, replaced by a simple woven cloths of neutral tones. Her hair flowed freely, unmarked by the metal pins of her rank. Her face, though calm, carried the weight of 1,000 silent questions. They walked side by side through the garden path toward the residential quarters reserved for alien delegates, now empty and quiet. She noticed the way. Earth pulsed with sound even in its silence. The wind hummed against the trees, the stones clicked beneath their feet, and in the distance laughter echoed. From the city beyond, she had been here before, under different terms, under royal escort and under watchful eyes. Now she was here to live among humans, to study them, to feel them, to learn their ways and decide if emotion was truly weakness or something far more powerful. Daniel explained the basics of her stay. She would receive no special treatment, no security, no translator drones, no surveillance bots. She would attend community events, eat local meals, walk among the people, and report back to no one except herself. Alari asked if she would be safe. Daniel replied that safety was a human illusion and growth rarely came with guarantees. She did not fully understand the answer, but chose to accept it. Days passed like quiet waves, each one slightly warmer than the last. Alari visited markets where humans argued over fruit prices, then shared stories over tea. She watched children play games without clear rules, yet full of laughter and fairness. She joined a community workshop where an old woman taught her how to paint using pigments made from earth flowers. She learned that humans cried in public without shame. She saw them argue fiercely, then embrace without hesitation. She felt their chaos again, but this time it was less like a storm and more like music, wild, yes, but with rhythm. Daniel became her guide, not just in language but in humanity. He showed her how humans mourned by taking her to a candlelight vigil for a lost teacher. He showed her how they celebrated by inviting her to a local wedding where the bride wore red and danced in circles of joy. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the western hills, Alari and Daniel sat near a lake watching the light ripple across the water. The surface looked calm, but underneath it, fish darted and currents shifted and the unseen life moved with silent purpose. Alari asked him if all humans were like this. Daniel said, no, some were cruel, some were broken, some feared what they did not understand, but most tried, most hoped, most loved. She thought about her own people, how emotion was controlled, how touch was limited, how honesty was wrapped in layers of duty. She thought about how different Earth was, how fragile and reckless, and yet how strong in ways she had never seen before. Her communicator buzzed for the first time since her arrival. A coded message from the stars, a reminder that her journey had limits, a warning that her feelings must remain separate, a suggestion that Earth could never be more than a subject of study. She deleted the message. The next day, a news report flashed across public screens, a border skirmish between two Earth nations. Satellites down, trade routes blocked, supplies threatened. Alari watched with concern, not because of politics, but because of the faces of the people around her who now feared war. She asked Daniel what he would do if war broke out. He said he would protect what he loved. He asked her what she would do. She did not know. That night someone left a note at her door. No signature, no message, just 5 words written in Varelian script. You do not belong here. She read it once, then folded it and placed it in her pocket. She knew that staying would become harder. She knew that feelings would become louder. She knew that every step closer to Earth would take her one step further from the stars that raised her. But she also knew something had changed forever. This planet, with its fragile people and chaotic love and imperfect hope, had taught her more in weeks than her own world had in decades. And even if she returned home empty-handed, without proof, without permission, she would never again believe that emotion was weakness, because she had felt its power, because she had seen its light, because she had begun to care, not as a princess, not as an observer, but as a larygist. Ilarion, for the first time, that was enough. Night settled over New Geneva like a soft blanket, hiding the unrest. Beneath the surface, the embassy lights flickered in patterns set by old protocol. But something about the rhythm felt wrong to Alari, as if the piece was pretending to be real. She stood on the rooftop garden watching the horizon blink with city lights and silent tension. Her communicator was off, but even in silence, she could feel the shift in the wind, something deeper than weather, something human and something not. Daniel arrived with quiet steps, carrying a datapad and a tired expression. He handed it to her without speaking. She glanced at the screen and saw the words she had feared for weeks. Alien forces blame human sabotage for breach in the outer atmosphere. Trade halt initiated. Military talks underway. She scrolled further and paused at the last line. Earth denies all allegations, awaiting evidence. Alari lowered the pad slowly, her fingers stiff, her heart not racing but steady like the eye of a coming storm. She knew the truth had no voice yet, but lies had already begun to sing. She asked Daniel if he believed it. He said no, but others will. He said truth is often outpaced by fear. The explosion happened just before dawn. It came without warning, without noise, just a blinding light followed by a pressure wave that shattered windows and hearts. The east wing of the embassy vanished in flame and dust. 3 human workers gone and 2 alien aides injured. Emergency teams arrived too late to save the ones buried beneath steel and stony. Alari ran toward the fire with Daniel close behind her, cloak torn, her hands scraped, her voice lost in the alarms. She found one of her own guards trapped beneath a fallen beam, eyes wide with fear, blood on his lips. He whispered one word before passing. Sabotage. The investigation moved fast, but the conclusion moved faster. Alien rebels blamed Earth, humans accused. Alien radicals. Old wounds reopened and peace bled from headlines into the streets. Rumors spread like sickness. Soldiers stood at checkpoints. Civilians looked at the sky as if it might fall, but Alari had seen something the others missed a piece of. Wiring not standard, a fragment of a code. Only one group used a signature from her own home, not from Earth, but from the hidden circle of dissenters who wanted war, who believed humans were too wild, too emotional, too dangerous. She took her findings to the local council, who listened but doubted, not because they thought she lied, but because they thought she cared too much. Her voice now sounded too human, her face now showed too much feeling. Her truth no longer matched the mask they trusted. So she turned to Daniel again. They broke protocol and entered the wreckage without clearance. She found the damaged drone core and used a hidden sequence known only to royal heirs. The core unlocked a recording showing the rebel commander placing the device, a man named Corval, once her instructor, once her mentor, once her protector. The betrayal crushed her chest like gravity, but there was no time for grief. She uploaded the footage to a neutral channel, broadcasting it across allied and alien networks. The image of Corval setting the charge played again and again, his voice clear, his intention cruel. If peace blinds you, then let war open your eyes. The galaxy watched in silence. The alien council recalled their envoys. The human side stood down from alert status, but trust had already been wounded. Peace was now breathing but not standing. That night Alari stood by a fountain in the quiet garden, hands dipped in the cool water, eyes closed, face tilted to the stars above. She had done everything. Against her training, against her rank, against her people, but also for them. Daniel found her there, silent as always, waiting, not to comfort, not to ask, just to be near. She told him she would have to leave soon, not in chains, not in exile, but in duty. Her people needed to know that truth still lived somewhere, even if they buried it, even if they feared. I've asked if she would come back. She did not answer with words. She reached out and touched his hand, not as a gesture of farewell, not as a symbol of sadness, but as something sacred between them, something neither ceremony nor conflict could erase. The stars above seemed closer that night, as if listening, as if waiting, because somewhere between betrayal and trust, between silence and voice, between worlds still learning how to hold each other, a new bond had been born, one no fire could burn, no light could break, and no fear could silence. The twin suns of Veralia rose above the capital city, casting golden light over crystal towers and marble spires, but the warmth in the sky did not reach the hearts of those gathered in the grand hall. The chamber stood in perfect silence as Princess Alari entered, alone, without guards, without banners, without the shimmering robe of royal blood. Her steps echoed softly across the polished floor, each one a quiet rebellion against centuries of unbending tradition. She walked past ancient statues of kings who never wept, queens who never touched, warriors who never questioned. She walked past advisors who once praised her control and now whispered doubts behind folded hands. She walked past her mother, the High Queen, whose eyes held no fury, only distance, as if trying to see through the daughter she no longer understood. At the center of the room stood the circle of judgment, a ring of light that glowed with the truth of Varelian law. Alari stepped into it without fear, without armor. Without silence, she had returned not to reclaim her title, not to defend her actions, but to speak a truth that now lived inside her more deeply than blood, more clearly than duty. A voice from the platform asked her name and rank. She replied with only her name. The crowd stirred, but the council said nothing. Galari lifted a small device from her pocket and activated the final recording from Earth, the one where Corval confessed to orchestrating the attack to provoke war, to restore what he believed had been lost. She played the footage before them all, letting the truth unfold, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. When it ended, no one spoke, not for a long time. Then the Queen asked her why she still chose Earth after all the chaos, all the danger, all the pain. Alari answered, because pain had taught her compassion, because danger had shown her courage, and because chaos had revealed the strength that lay in connection, not control. She told them about the human who never bowed yet never disrespected, who never shouted yet always stood firm, who never asked for trust yet offered it freely. She spoke of children who laughed without shame, of strangers who offered kindness without logic, of a world that was broken yet still tried every day to heal itself. She told them that she had found something more powerful than command, more lasting than fear, more real than pride. She had found belonging, not through blood or title or code, but through a hug. At that word the chamber shifted, as if air itself had stopped moving. A hug was not sacred in Varelian culture. It was not formal, it was not practiced, it was not understood. It was human, and yet she stood there saying it had changed her, saying it had awakened her, saying it had saved her. The council conferred in quiet voices. The Queen remained still, her fingers wrapped around the armrest carved with the sigil of their house. Alari waited, not for permission, not for forgiveness, but for whatever would come next. Then the Queen rose slowly and stepped down from the throne. She walked toward her daughter, one step at a time, not with ceremony, not with authority, but with something else, something unsure, something unspoken. She stopped in front of Alari and studied her face, as if seeing her for the first time, not as a princess, not as an heir, but as a soul lit by something more than legacy. The Queen opened her arms for a heartbeat. No one moved then. Alari stepped forward and embraced her mother. The silence broke not with sound, but with meaning, with history bending ever so slightly, with tradition cracking just enough to let something new grow. It was the first hug ever recorded between two royals of Varelion. It was enough. Later, Alari stood beneath the open sky, watching the clouds drift above the palace towers. Her title had been restored, not because she asked, but because she showed them who she had become. Her mission had not failed, it had transformed. Daniel's message came through the stars, a single line blinking across her private screen, still waiting for that second coffee. She smiled, not as royalty, not as legend, just as someone who knew what it meant to belong. She would return to Earth, not as an observer, not as a diplomat, but as a friend, as a builder of bridges, not walls, because one hug had started a fire and the second had turned it into light, and in that light, two worlds could finally see each other, not as enemies, not as puzzles, but as people, different, yes, flawed always, but reaching forward together.